All right, we're going to answer the really good question of how to make carrot puree. Now, this particular recipe for the carrot puree is very typical of what the procedure is for making different kinds of vegetable purees. Now, that might include celery root. It might include potatoes. God only knows, we've all had that. Now, there's mashed potatoes, and then there's mashed potatoes. Now, there's mashed carrots, and there's carrot puree. In the case of the carrot puree, we're going to make the distinction that puree means completely smooth. For with mashed, it's not completely smooth, okay? So it wouldn't be really called mashed carrots. And you certainly can make mashed carrots if you want, okay? And they're very good too. You can use the same formula, more or less, minus the food processor, okay? Which is part of the pureeing process, okay? So I'm going to begin by taking whole carrots and putting them into boiling salted water that I have back here. Now, in the case of this particular puree, we're going to use blanched, peeled, blanched as in completely cooked, Idaho potatoes to, quote, thicken the puree. Not because we have to, but because we want to. Now, we don't want to because it's better than making it without the potato. The puree can be made basically without the potato, so the base vegetables, all pureed carrot with the seasoning. In our case, we're going to put a little maple syrup, a little bit of butter, a little splash of cream, salt or sugar, and some chopped parsley, a little bit of, did I say butter? Yeah, a little bit of butter. Maple syrup, nutmeg, excuse me. That's the base puree. Now, if you make this puree by blanching the potatoes until they're tender enough to puree and pureeing them in a food processor, now before you finish them, they may be a little bit watery. If that should happen, you take the carrot puree and you put it on the stove at a very low temperature and you dry it out so it's not watery. But one of the things I'm going to show you in this particular lesson about making purees is that in all cases that you can, meaning in all cases that you can use vegetables that are of some substantial size, you want to blanch them in water whole, not all sliced up. If I take this same carrot and I boil it in pieces that size, like this, instead of whole, it's going to absorb more water, and when I puree it, it's going to require, you know, more, it has to be tightened up somehow. It has to have some body to it. And I'm using the potatoes as the way in which I'm making the body of the carrot puree. So it'll stand up like off a spoon, onto a plate. Otherwise, it becomes watery. Now, it goes into the whole definition of coulis if you serve it watery. But I'll get to that when we're making the puree, and I'll show you the texture of a coulis. And this particular lesson teaches you what a coulis is also. And a coulis, which is C-O-U-L-I-S, is the definitive word that describes the texture that falls between puree and sauce. It's a little bit like baby food. That's the definition of the texture of coulis. So whenever you see the word coulis of raspberry or coulis of tomato somewhere, which are the two most common ones that you see in the world of cooking, at least in the United States, it means that they're describing this baby food textured food preparation, okay? So the coulis is the definition of the texture, not the food or the dish, okay? But it's somehow been used to describe the dish so that you understand what the texture is rather than, like, for example, if you have chicken, it says fried chicken, baked chicken, roast chicken, grilled chicken. Coulis says the texture, like crispy chicken, okay? So that's what coulis means, and you'll learn that, and I will show you that when we're making the carrot puree. But to begin with, in this time-elapsed DVD lesson on making carrot puree, I'm going to start by putting the whole carrots into the boiling salted water. Again, using the whole carrots, they will not absorb as much water as if I cut them up. And that's important when you're making the puree, because one of the things we're going to do is we're going to spend a fair amount of time at the end of the process of making the carrot puree, during the finishing of the carrot puree, is adjusting the texture. That's a big part of making the puree, because typically the purees are never where you want them when you first puree them, and you have to adjust them. Okay? So I have in a pan next to the carrots here some boiled, peeled Idaho potatoes. Now this recipe calls for about 20 ounces of potatoes and about 3 pounds of carrots, I believe. 2 pounds of carrots and 20 ounces of potato. The important lesson in this lesson about making purees, and this is the only puree in this entire course. So my job here really is to teach you what you need to know about making a vegetable puree. We're using carrots as the example, okay? Is the important thing for you to understand that I'm going to teach you in this particular lesson about making a puree is the process of adjusting the texture and how it's blanched or not blanched and so on and so forth. So we'll be back time-elapsed in about 15, 20 minutes because we're going to puree the carrot in the food processor, then we're going to feed the potatoes into it until we get just the right texture that we want. So whatever the weights and measures are in this recipe, in this case it's 2 pounds of carrots and 20 ounces of potato, those are nice guidelines, but you're really going to learn is how to make the puree. It doesn't matter to me if you got 20 pounds of carrots and 40 pounds of potatoes. You will make the decision as to how much potato you need to add to your puree based on the texture that comes to life as you add the potato. And that's what you'll need to understand, and that's what you're going to learn today. So we're going to come back time-elapsed right now in 10, 15 minutes when the carrots are hot, but cooked enough to be pureed in the food processor. And then we're going to take them directly out of the hot water and put them right into the food processor because they puree better and faster, if you will, when they're hot. So you don't want to blanch them, take them out, let them sit around for a while before you start pureeing them. We're not going to do that. So when we come back right now in 30 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever it takes, we're going to take them right into the food processor. Okay, we're back to that carrot puree. And I came back just a little bit early because one of the options that I'm giving you in the recipe is to garnish the carrot puree with toast, okay? So I'm going to get some toast in the oven real quick while the carrots are finishing, and it's just about done right now. So we're going to take some nice, soft, unsalted butter, and we're going to butter the toast. And we're going to put it on a sheet pan and pop it in the oven at about 450 degrees. So you want to butter it first before we toast it, okay? After we toast it, then we're going to trim it, shapes and sizes that we want, put a little parsley on it. Of course, there's other things you can put on it. You can even put a little cinnamon on this toast if you want. So we're going to go with that, and I'm going to pop this in the oven now at about 450 degrees. We're going to keep an eye on this because this can burn fairly quickly, okay? All right, now, the carrot puree, which we're going to make in the food processor here. If I get the food processor to work, which I can, of course. Okay, now, here's what we're going to do. Louis, let me have the set of tongs, please. Now the carrots, something else you should know, I suggested that you blanch the carrots until they're tender enough to eat. Thank you, Louis. Whole so that they wouldn't absorb as much water. If you continue cooking them after they cook, they begin absorbing water too. So when they're cooked, you got to get them out. Otherwise, you're defeating the purpose of cooking them whole, which is what I recommend that you do. Now you'll know if it's tender enough to eat by eating a little piece. And these carrots are tender enough to be pureed. Now the nutmeg and the maple syrup and a little bit of butter and the heavy cream is what we're going to use to finish the carrot puree. Now I'm going to take the carrot right out of the boiling water. If this machine might make a little bit of noise. I'm going to start pureeing it. Now remember one thing. You cannot over puree the carrots.